Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us in this first of a series of lessons titled "Bullies from the Pulpit" here at Help for Wounded Saints. Now, this is something that I've been praying about since August when we first launched the page about discussing this topic. As most of you, obviously, if you're a part of our page, know. There's been many that have been wounded, very likely you as well, from pastors, youth pastors, deacons, different leaders within the church. I'll give you some background about myself. I grew up, initially the church I grew up in was not an independent fundamental Baptist church. It was actually a part of what's called the Galilean Baptist Mission in Michigan. But in 1983, the pastor that we had retired, and we called, he was an older gentleman, he was in his 70s, we called a younger gentleman to become the pastor of our church. He was in his mid-30s, young, married, had kids of his own that were still living at home, and we were excited to maybe have fresh blood, some young blood within the church. Unfortunately, what we did not know, or didn't fully appreciate at the time, was this man was a part of a group that I know I was not familiar with, and many of the church were not familiar with, a group that was called the Independent Fundamental Baptist Movement. He was a graduate from Hyles-Anderson College. And within the first couple of months, we knew something was different. Unfortunately, some very good people left the church, because all they saw was potential problems, and unfortunately they were right. While the church did grow, unfortunately this man was not strong, and he ended up leaving the church. And from there, though, the damage was done. One of the things that was taught was that you don't question the pastor, that the pastor is the authority, he's God's man. Well, I graduated from a Christian school that was a part of an independent fundamental Baptist movement. And then I graduated from Midwestern Baptist College in 1994. Some of you may not be familiar with the name of the college itself, but some of you may be familiar with the name of the founder of the college, Dr. Tom Malone. Midwestern Baptist College was the college that put the doctor in front of Jack Hyles. We were the ones that gave Jack Hyles his first honorary doctorate. And one of the things that I was taught in basically the pastor's class, how to be a pastor, was you as the pastor are the final word on everything. Not just on the teaching of God's word, but on the business side of things, how a building is built, how to run a business meeting, everything. So that's what we did. Excuse me. So that's what I learned. But to me, as they were teaching me this, there were just things that did not add up. So I even questioned it. I said, well, what about this, and what about that? And in essence, I was told, you're still obviously a baby Christian, you need to grow up. Okay. Well, in 2009, I'm sorry. I'll try again. 2008. Oh, so I was getting there. The joys of getting old. In 2008, I finally had enough. I walked away from the Independent Fundamental Baptist movement and went to a Southern Baptist church where I had been taught the convention gives the preachers their sermon and tell them what to preach, which is as far from the truth as you can get. And the church was a wonderful church. It allowed me to basically, in essence, take a sabbatical. Take some time off. I would teach every once in a while, but for the most part, anytime I joined an independent fundamental Baptist church prior to that, they'll tell you first thing, find you a church and then just rush in. Find a ministry and do it. Which sometimes that is what you need, but other times you really just need to chill. Just to relax. And when I say relax, not as in get lazy, but Don't focus so much on the ministries as focusing on yourself. God himself, Jesus himself, many times it would say he went away and went apart to rest a while. He went apart to rest. And so that's what I did, and it was the best thing that happened to me, and that was eventually what started the prayer page, which eventually started Help for Wounded Saints. So, said all that to say this. This topic, Bullies from the Pulpit, has weighed heavy in my heart for almost 20 years now. And so I've been praying about which direction to go to, and I'm still praying as far as the final direction, but the Lord's finally given me the liberty to go ahead and start this series. Now, initially, what I was hoping to do was, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, we're going to go to 1 Timothy 3, and then we're going to look at this chapter, and then we're going to look at that chapter. Boom, done, 1 week, over, have a nice day. So, but as I studied, I'm like, I've got two options. I can, number one, do the Cliff Notes version and just skim the surface and be done. But to me, that would be robbing myself and robbing you. There's so much that really needs to be discussed and needs to be covered that I can't do it in a right way in 1 week. So this is going to take several weeks. Initially, the first part I'm going to tell you right now, we're talking just the qualifications of a pastor. We're probably looking about 4 to 5 weeks. Because what I want to do, first of all, and before I go any further, I'm sorry, I meant to say this earlier. In each of these series, we're going to have an outline. And it'll be available in the comments section below, so you'll be able to follow along. There, got that part. So, in the first couple of weeks, about 4 weeks, we're going to look, first of all, at the qualifications of a pastor. Now, today, the purpose of today is just going to be kind of a broad stroke, give you an idea of where we're going to come from, and then kind of introduce the first part, qualifications of a pastor. And then, so we're going to look initially at qualifications of a pastor. But then additionally, we're going to be looking at other passages that are used for basically how to treat a pastor and how the pastor has the final authority. We're going to be looking at texts out of the Bible that are commonly used that are either completely out of context or misinterpreted altogether. So we're going to be looking at those as well. And then finally, toward the end, we're going to actually look, and the Bible actually does tell us how to confront a pastor. We're going to look at that, how you scripturally can confront a pastor. Because as someone who has been an assistant pastor and a pastor and now a chaplain, we make mistakes. We're human. As they say, I put my pants on the same way you do, one leg at a time. And ladies, that includes you too. You can wear pants and still go to heaven. So, we're not perfect. And there's been times I've been, lovingly said, hey, Chaplain Ron, Pastor Ron, whatever you want to call me, just don't call me late for dinner. You read this verse, and either I don't think you meant to say what you said, or you said this, but really this is what it means. And they were right. I was wrong. And I've had to go back and say, you know what? Put my foot in my mouth. I was wrong. So you can confront your pastor, but there is a scriptural way to do it. And then at the very end, I want to talk about things that you can do if you've been a victim of abuse from God's man. And I want to use that term can. Unfortunately and sadly, there are some people that have been abused by a pastor that the damage is done. Some are beyond repair. And I pray for those people every day that God will have mercy on their soul. It's not their fault. But hopefully, through this series, maybe there'll be somebody out there that'll watch that we can help you. And that is the purpose of this series. So I ask that you do this for me. that you would pray for me, that God will give me the wisdom to be a help. The last thing I want to do is to be another statistic, to be another preacher that has shoved somebody off the edge. That is the last thing I want to do. I want to be a help to you, and I pray to God, because it's only going to be through Him that I can be a help. I can't do it on my own. Only God can do it, but I pray and I pray and I pray that I will be a help to somebody out there, to let you know that it's okay, that you're hurt, but that not every preacher is like that. Not every church is like that. Before I go further, I'm going to go ahead and I want to do a little commercial. Some of you watching have heard of us, have heard of Help from Wounded Saints, either through Facebook or maybe through a friend. But Help for Wounded Saints is actually a ministry of the prayer page. Prayer page, the Lord allowed me to start it in 2014. The purpose of the prayer page is twofold. One, to pray for others, just as the name applies. But more than that, it is to provide spiritual encouragement to those that need it, i.e. those that have been wounded by a pastor, deacon, Sunday school teacher, or church. One of the things that we offer at the prayer page is a weekly Bible study, like what we're seeing here. Now, the series Bullies from the Pulpit, I'm not doing that with the prayer page, because there are people on the prayer page that have never really gone through this. So I'm doing different Bible studies with them, and I'm doing a series Bullies from the Pulpit with Help from Wounded Saints. But with the prayer page, one thing that we do is we do offer a weekly Bible study. Ideally, initially I did it for a couple people that physically could not go to church. It had nothing to do with abuse. They have an illness that prevents them from getting out. And so I wanted to give them another format for them to go to church. But then as it grew, I got, or the Lord, I should say, led several people that will not go through the door of a church because of what's going on. But they've caught one of our Bible studies and they're like, Ron, I really need this. You don't know how much this means to you. Don't know how much this means to me. And to that I say, you're right. I don't know how much it means to you, but obviously God does. And He's given me the privilege to teach others through that medium. So if that's you, you've been wounded by church, you really have no desire to go back to a church, I welcome you to join us. The prayer page. The Bible studies are on Fridays. Just like this one, they're pre-recorded. So can't give you an exact time to be here. Reason why we don't do a live service is that I live in the country. So far in the country, we can't even get satellite TV. I was barely able to get satellite internet. And so we tried a live feed initially, and it was a disaster of epic proportions. So we had to go with a pre-recorded study. So the studies are pre-recorded, released on Fridays, and best of all, no offering. We don't collect money here, either Help for Wounded Saints or the prayer page, for two reasons. Number one, because obviously I'm doing this from the home. Very, very little overhead. And number two, there are other organizations out there that need the money far more than we do. And honestly, there's a third reason. I really don't want to deal with the headache with the IRS. Preachers and money, bad thing. So don't send me, please. Don't send me money, please. History in the making, folks. A preacher on media that's not asking for money. So anyway, I digress. Big time. So, but I wanted to invite you. Join us. Again, it's called the Prayer Page. You can find us on Facebook. Our address is, easiest way to find us is just to type the letters the initials, FB, all lowercase. FB, stand for Facebook. FB.me/The Prayer Page US. The Prayer Page US. Somebody else got just the Prayer Page already on Facebook, so I couldn't grab it, so added US at the end. So it's fb.me/The Prayer Page US, or you can go to our website, theprayerpage.org. So with that, I want to go into kind of the part one of our series. And again, this is going to be an introduction. Qualifications of a pastor. Now, This is going to be out of 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. Now, again, we're not going to look at all of these today. This will take, I was actually counting it, I was looking at it last night. It's going to take at least 4 weeks. I'm thinking maybe as many as 6. We'll see what the Lord leads. But definitely at least 4 weeks just to get through this, because there's so much in here. But I do want to give you an overview of what it says and what we're going to be looking at. All right, 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. Apostle Paul is writing Timothy. It says here, this is a true saying, if a man desire the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. Now, I want to stop there for a second. The Greek word, sorry, jumping ahead here. The New Testament is written in Greek. Now, regardless of what you may have been taught in an independent fundamental Baptist church, Greek matters. Greek matters, Hebrew matters. Especially Greek. Now, I wasn't able to take Hebrew in college because honestly our Hebrew professor died. But a Greek I was able to take. And the thing about Greek is that it is the ancient Koine Greek is especially precise language. And that is the reason why I believe the New Testament was written in Greek and not in English, because I say the word love, for example. There's so many different ways to say the word love. I love my wife. She's my soulmate. She's my best friend. She's also wife number 2, which is why I can't be a pastor. Talk about that more here in a moment. But I love my wife. But guess what? I love Mexican food. Give me a chimichanga any day. Oh. And Reese's peanut butter cups that have been sitting in the fridge for a little bit, that are cold. Hallelujah, that is manna from heaven. But see, that word love, there's different ways to say it, different ways to express it. So Greek goes even more into detail, but it goes into detail to where it is specific. It has a specific word. So, like the word love my wife, that's agape. Oh no, that's not agape, I'm sorry. Agape is the way we love God. I just had a total mind blank, but the word love, even in Greek, for a wife is different than the word love for a friend, which is phileo, or word love for God, which is agape. So I said all I had to say this. Word bishop in this passage here, you'll see the word bishop. The word bishop, Greek word is episkopos. Episkopos. It's a noun. It means overseer, supervisor, ruler. Pastor. We're going to use, for the purpose of our study, we're going to refer to as pastor. So Paul says here that if a man desires to be a pastor, he desires a good work. Now, personally, I also think he's insane, but if that's what God wants him to do, he'd be insane not to do it. But I digress. Verse 2. So, qualifications of a pastor. Pastor must then be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy of filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous, one that ruleth well in his own house, having his children in submission with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not being a novice, lest he be lifted up with pride, and then he fall into the condemnation of the devil. Verse 7 is huge. Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. So I want to look at a couple of things here, then I'm going to kind of cap off verse 7, and then we'll be done for this week. So, first of all, there's 15 different listings here that a pastor must be. First of all, must be blameless. Basically, you can't lay blame on him. Husband of one wife. Good, bad, or indifferent. Now, my first wife I met at an independent fundamental Baptist college was basically told if you want to be a pastor, assistant pastor, you got to be married. Found her. She was willing to date me. We got married. A disaster of epic proportions. Within 2 weeks, I knew I was in trouble. I was in trouble. And we tried to make it work. It didn't work. We ended up getting a divorce. Now, it's crazy. We get along better divorced than we did married. Why? Because she was not the one God wanted for me. What I should have done is just been patient and waited. It saved me a whole lot of trouble. Now, the flip side of that is that with my first wife, I have 2 daughters that are now adults, beautiful young ladies that both got married this year, both got married this summer, both tried to kill their father. 2 wonderful young men, and they're both serving the Lord. So there is that aspect, but I digress. We got a divorce, and I knew when I got a divorce, any idea of being a pastor just went out the window, because scripturally I cannot be a pastor. Some people will argue with me, but it says clearly, and I even studied in the Greek, did some research, and simply put, it's not one wife at a time. It's one wife, period. You get a divorce, it's done. Move on. But I can't be a chaplain. No scriptural qualifications per se to be a chaplain, but a lot of these would still apply, I would say. Vigilant. You need to be vigilant. And that word sober is not talking about alcohol. We're going to talk about alcohol here in just a moment. That word sober means, for lack of a better term, have tact. Be appropriate. How many of us know pastors that would say things in situations that was like, you really didn't need to go there. That was just wholly inappropriate. It kind of goes on the next one. Be good behavior. Behave yourself. Hospitable. And we're not talking about hospital visitation. We're talking about being, and actually hospital visitation is part of it, but it's bigger than that. It's, you need to be able to go into somebody's home, sit down, and have a conversation with them. Or, even still, you need to be able to invite people into your home and be able to sit down, have a conversation, have a meal. Apt to teach. How many of you with the raise of your hand, obviously I can't see it, but how many of you with the raise of your hand, have listened to either a pastor or a Sunday school teacher that had no business being behind a pulpit, a platform, or anywhere near a chalkboard or a whiteboard? Here. Hands raised. If you can't teach and you can't preach, don't do it. Because guess what? If you can't do it, the message isn't going to get out and you're just wasting people's time. Not given to wine. And again, we're going to talk more about this later, but how exactly do you expect to be able to be led by the Spirit when you've drank too many spirits? Now, I'm not saying being a total teetotaler here. We'll talk more about it here in a second. But not given to wine. Basically, you can't be a drunkard. Can't be an alcoholic. You can't have a hair-trigger temper. Basically, a striker. You can't have a hair-trigger temper that just, you go off at, like I said, a hair-trigger. Not in it. Not greedy for filthy lucre. And those of you that are familiar with, there was a one page I was with, I think it's Support for Independent Fundamental Baptists, I might be wrong. But there is a pastor in, I believe it's Texas, that has a membership of 350 people. He has a salary of $100,000 a year. Plus he has at least, I believe, 2 assistants. Definitely 1, maybe 2, that has an annual salary of $75,000. Now, I don't know very many churches that properly can function as a church, give to missions, give to the poor, maintain their own facilities with 350 people, and have in their budget a staff salary of at least $175,000, if not $250,000. Something's just not right there. Now, I'll say this. There's both sides of the coin. I've seen preachers, and I've been one. I pastored a church, initially had 15 people. So we can't afford to put you on full time, obviously. But we can afford to pay your rent, wherever whatever you're living. It's got to be a decent rent. They gave me a cap. My rent was like $500 a month. Wife, 2 daughters. They gave me enough for rent, and then they paid for our membership within a food club, which was basically my salary package was $600 a month. The rest of the time I worked at Chick-fil-A, so I was bivocational. Within a year, the church had grown to 50. They wanted to cut my salary. I don't know why. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I take that back. They wanted to cut my salary so they could raise money for a roof on the church. No. You don't do that either. Personally, I believe that when it comes to paying a pastor, what you do is you take your church membership, you take how much they make each year, get an average. What the average is, that's what you pay your preacher. Plain and simple. But again, I digress. As well, you got to be patient, not one to pick a fight. Don't be looking for a fight. Don't be looking to go down to the Assembly of God church here and start with your placard saying, if it ain't King James, it ain't Bible. Not greedy. Church pastor I was just talking about, the $100,000 salary, he had a house that probably easily $300,000 with a brand new vehicle, had a new lawnmower, all bunch of stuff that we'll talk about here in verse 7, but it's just poor taste, poor taste. Able to rule his own house well. I love how Paul puts it in verse 5. Look, in essence, he's saying, you need to be able to run your own house well. If you can't run your own house, how do you expect to run a church? Common sense. You can't control your kids, you can't control your wife. And again, when I use that word control, bad word, if you can't control is a bad word. Flashback to IFB days, sorry. Apologize if I triggered anybody. If you can't show loving, godly leadership in your own home, how do you expect to be able to show loving, godly leadership within the church? Then verse 7, to me, is the coup de grace, the pièce de résistance. Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall under reproach and the snare of the devil. Got 2 words to describe that. Jack Scott. Now, good, bad, or indifferent. The fact of the matter is that Jack Scott was a leader of a church that ran, I think they said on average 15,000, 14,000. Would rant and rave about immorality, which you should. He would rant and rave about sin, which you should. But then he turned around and had sexual relations with a minor. But not only did that, he tried to hide it. He basically went over 2 different state lines, Illinois and Michigan. Had pictures on his phone. And that's how he was caught. And that's why he's still in a federal penitentiary in Ashburn, in Kentucky, somewhere in Kentucky. Now, I'm I'm not pointing him out specifically to pick on him, but to use him as an illustration because of the things that he would say behind the pulpit, and because of the way that he preached behind the pulpit, and because of the fact that it was on YouTube, and he would go out and he would purposely go out to make a stand when he was caught and fired from his church. The world had a heyday. All right, there goes another one. Or, I told you so. Now here it's talking about, verse 6 was talking about a novice, which is true about a novice, but I also believe it applies to all these 15 other things that we mentioned. If you don't follow these 15 things, any one of those things will cause you to fall. And when you fall, that's just going to be another tool for Satan to have a bunch of people say, there it goes again. There's another one. And so that's why Paul gave this list in Timothy. And that is why we're going to go over each and every one of them. The reason being is that there are a lot of preachers, and honestly myself included, there's not going to be a whole lot of preachers out there that can say they're not guilty of any of these. But unfortunately, there's a lot of preachers that are guilty of a lot of these things. And so we're going to go over them, again, not to pick on the preacher per se, again, not to look for a fight ourselves, but to show that, hey, preacher, you say you want to be worthy of double honor, and the Bible does say that. Well, if you want to be worthy of double honor, there's qualifications that we expect out of you as a pastor. So again, I hope this will be a help to you. We went a little bit long today. Honestly, I try to keep them down to 15 or 20 minutes because for most people, honestly, with television, whatever, your attention span is only going to be 15 to 20 minutes. So I try to use a philosophy: speak up, sit up, speak up, and shut up. Now, that's why I can't tell you exactly how many the series this is going to be, because I'm going to try to keep it within 15 to 20 minutes. You know, I may have a series and I hit 15 minutes and I'm not done. Well, we're going to stop and we're going to move on to the next one. We'll take it from there. So, appreciate you watching. Hey, do me a favor as well. If you have any suggestions, criticisms, or something that you would like me to address in this series, I would love to hear from you. Please email me. You can email me at theprayerpageus@gmail.com. Again, theprayerpageus@gmail.com, and just put under the subject heading, Bullies in the Pulpit, and I'll be more than happy to read it. And, you know, criticisms included. I would love to hear from you. I want to learn from you. I want to be able to help you, but at the same time, I want to be able to learn from you as well. I want this to be a give and take, kind of like a classroom. I don't want this to be like a sermon where the preacher says it all and you all shut up. I want this to be like a classroom. You know, you hear something, ask questions. You have a criticism, let me know. Suggestion, let me know. Compliments will work too. But anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next Friday. And until then, have a safe week and God bless.